Okay, okay, they came. And they just disappeared.
Disappeared.
My name is Jay Bishop, and the video you just saw was the night that extraterrestrials proved they were speaking to me telepathically. The excitement you hear in my voice in the video is because I just watched that same exact orange orb streak orange light behind it as it flew across the western sky. Then turned from an orange orb streaking light behind it into a 5-pointed star that was orange and streaking light behind it, just like the emoji star. It was one of the most amazing ET phenomenon examples that I'd ever seen up until that point. Unfortunately, I was not able to get footage of what it was doing before that video starts because I had made a habit of putting my phone away and turning it off so I could be more respectful of the extraterrestrials. I was starting to suspect that my attempts at recording things were the reason why they weren't really showing up definitively. So when this orange orb showed up, the first thing I did is I asked them, can I record this? And I heard yes in my mind. So I started scrambling to get it out of my pocket, turned it on. Of course, the iPhone was taking forever to turn on at that time period, and I wanted to strangle the phone. And the literal millisecond I hit that red button, that orange orb stopped streaking light and just turned into the orange orb. And you can see on the video in the beginning, it starts to disappear. And then it comes back, it stays on there, and then it disappears. And I make the comment that it just disappeared. Now, the interesting thing about that particular event was that was the second time of the day that the extraterrestrials had proved to me that they were speaking to me telepathically. I'm going to tell you about the very first event because it's probably one of the most important ones in my opinion. It's one that I don't have recorded, but it's important to how I got to this point where I am every day telepathically speaking to extraterrestrials, going out and doing contact with them, trying to do these videos and teach people how to do this. I mean, this is all still pretty brand new to me. I've only been doing this for about 2 months. I'll try to explain in this video how I got here, kind of what was my background, what led me to this. So you get an idea. I'm not just some crazy person saying that this is happening. I too question it myself. So I am completely with you if you are skeptical about, what's going on and if that's really happening. To this day, I question certain things, but there's been enough phenomena that they've showed me that I now know that it is really happening. At least something's really happening and something's really speaking to me, and they're setting it up and they're working with me to get this information and these examples out there to teach people about extraterrestrial contact from humans to extraterrestrials. With that, let me tell you the story about how they confirmed they were speaking to me telepathically the morning of August 7th. I was in my room. It was about 4 a.m. I was having a hard time going to sleep. I was questioning my sanity. I'd been trying to do extraterrestrial contact for about 2 or 3 weeks up until that point, and it wasn't very successful. I'd seen some things, but they weren't definitive at all as far as I was concerned. And so I was starting to really question my sanity, and I was definitely hearing things speak to me, and that's why I started thinking maybe I was going crazy. And I thought in my mind, I was like, okay, well, what would have made me go crazy? Psychosis like this doesn't really come on all of a sudden at 43 years old. So, what could have caused it? And I thought about the fact that I had been pretty depressed from losing my apartment in October of 2022. Things hadn't gone very well for a while. Like, I would say since the pandemic in 2020. I lost my favorite job at that point, and then 2021, I got a job working for Jerome's Furniture, and that job sucked a lot, and I hated it, but I stayed there for over a year trying to make it work. So I left that job, and because I left the job, wound up having to give up my apartment that I lived with my youngest daughter. And so I was still feeling the depression of that. And that's what made me think maybe it was depression-induced psychosis that was causing me to maybe hallucinate these voices that were speaking in my mind, even though they sounded like my thought voices. They were just like slightly different. As that like thought was starting to take hold, and I was sitting in my chair, and I was starting to be like, maybe I really am crazy. Like right before this voice that kept trying to talk to me was trying to convince me to bring my mom with me to one of my contact events. I had like a scheduled future event that I was supposed to go to, and they wanted me to bring my mom with me. So I made it clear to them. I was like, look, I have not had enough definitive stuff to believe that I'm speaking something. I need some kind of definitive proof this is actually happening, that I'm not crazy, especially if you want me to convince my mom to go with me. Right as I was saying that, I was really starting to believe that I was crazy. A voice spoke to me and said, go outside and you will have your proof. I responded with, wait, you mean like go outside right now? I mean, it was 4 a.m. in the morning. So I'm like, okay, are you sure? And it said yes. So I went outside onto the porch where we live. And this is the same porch where you see me get all those weird phenomenon videos that I call porch shots and stuff, if you've seen any of my phenomena videos. So I go out on the porch, and as soon as I go out on the porch, it's about 4:10 a.m. at this point, I see this really bright light in the distance. And it doesn't look like a normal plane light at this point. It was the first object I saw the night of August 7th, right before the orange orb. That's the same plane light I saw in the morning. Now, the difference is, when I watched this, I looked at it and I was like, well, that's a really bright light. And then I saw like a green light blink on one side and a red light blink on the other. I knew based on just a little bit of contact attempts that I was making and the videos I had taken that it was most likely a plane, based on how the lights were blinking, even though the light in the middle was probably the brightest I've ever seen a plane light. And it was coming straight towards me in the sky. And I started getting kind of bummed because like right before this, my expectation was that they were going to show me some orange orb appear above the houses near us. So keep that in mind, because what do they do that night? They gave me an orange orb. But that's what I was expecting in my mind at that moment when I was outside, not a plane light. And so I really started feeling disappointed. I was like, man, it's clearly a plane, you know? I was like, why did they have me go outside for a plane? And then this plane, as it went right above my head, it just left the atmosphere. Like, I'm not kidding. It left the atmosphere and disappeared. And I knew that it wasn't a normal plane at that point. That's when I knew. I was like, okay, well, that's pretty definitive proof. I was pretty excited about it. I remember talking to my dad and my brother and everybody and telling them what was happening. When that happened, I was starting to feel like, okay, maybe this was really happening. Still in the back of my mind, though, I was like, you know what? What if it is a plane? Maybe I just hallucinated the fact that it disappeared, right? So that's why I think they made sure to do the orange orb phenomenon that night. And the interesting thing is right before the orange orb appeared, that same plane light that I saw disappear is there. And I get really excited. I'm like, oh my God, they're there. And then I realized, oh wait, no, it's a plane. Completely forgetting I saw a plane earlier in the morning disappear above my head because I was looking for something definitive. So I put my phone away and I turned it off again. And I just thought, oh man, I was so wrong. Again, I saw a plane. Maybe I really am just crazy, right? And that's when the orange orb started flying. And then you've seen the video in the beginning of this of what that turned into and the fact that it disappears. That was the first night that they gave me definitive proof that this was really happening. I was really contacting extraterrestrials. They were really speaking to my mind. I mean, they told me where they'd show up, and they showed up at that point, and that's as definitive as it gets as far as I'm concerned.